Come and slide on me.
Now, Missed Calls is mainly a song about how Paris is trying to move beyond his past as his ex wants to move back into his life, but to no surprise, he wants to leave his toxic past behind him, as he describes struggling to just try and ignore all her missed calls. And I love the beat for the song, as it's very eerie and just spaced out, as almost as if you don't really know where you're going anymore. And it feels like you're just in the dark trying to make sense of things and just piece things together. And just as a quick side note too, this beat was a pretty popular beat back in 2017. I mean, a lot of rappers at the time in general were using the beat, especially around that time for Christian hip hop in general. I know that Joey Vantes at the time, who also went by Joey Jewish, was using the beat on his Vantes Project 1 album that same year. And side by side, both other versions go pretty well with the beat.
I think I know why you were caught this time.
Tell me things, tell me all them things. Say it like you know what's good for me. I'm the spy, have me triggering. Take me high, let me spread your wings, yeah.
Now, side by side, I'd probably pick Joey's version to go along with this beat, but Missed Call still slaps pretty hard too. And along with how popular the beat was, the slow space and eeriness was also a direct reflection of where I was moving in my life at the time, which was really just nowhere, it seemed. If you follow my story in part 1, then you would know how crazy the first half of that year alone was. But then towards the latter half, everything past September was just an unknown space in my life. And everybody is afraid of the unknown just simply because there's no answer to if you're gonna fail or succeed. But regardless, you won't find an answer until you start moving, which is the biggest motivator to just getting out of that unknown space in the first place. And so my semester back was underway. I was unfortunately working back at that McDonald's after a brief stint at another job. And this is where you could say everything that I had grown up with was beginning to just fade away. Like it was just like the beginning of just the end, or pretty much I was already at the end. Around October, a coworker of mine, when I was previously working at the YMCA, had passed away at the time. Rest in peace to Alex. But she had passed away at the young age of 19. And it was pretty shocking to hear, as even though there was a lot of drama at that workplace, everybody loved working with this girl. Everybody just loved being around her. And her sudden passing just put into perspective just how death itself is, and how, you know, when you're in your early 20s and you think everybody's going to start off on the right foot in life and everything is just promised to anyone, it really isn't the case, and anything can come for you at any time. Whatever starts today can just easily end tomorrow. So her passing just put a lot of that into perspective, and just how life can just pass you by real quick. And once she had passed away, it felt like a piece of that community at that time was gone. And when her old high school just decided to hold like a memorial service for the whole entire community to come out to, I remember when all my friends and like ex-coworkers had gathered, everybody didn't say it, but we all knew that it was the end of not an era, but I guess a good time at that YMCA. And so a lot of the memories that we made throughout high school and just up to everyone's firing made us realize that everything was just finally being laid to rest, and it was just time to just move on individually with our own lives. And before I proceed, I just wanted to quickly throw this quick bit in just because in part one, I realized that I was so focused on trying to shorten the video length so much that I left out a lot of important details just at the time when I was just trying to quit the YMCA and everything like that. But I just wanted to quickly throw this quick bit in just because I felt like as well it would limit a lot of your guys' perspectives as to why I completely felt bitter throughout that whole summer and everything like that. And it just adds and completely fills in the blanks to the entire story. But prior to leaving, I'll keep it relatively short and concise. But basically what had happened is one of my friends got accused by some random desk worker who started this whole thing that him and this other guy, they weren't watching a bunch of kids in the daycare, which wasn't true at all because there was another worker that saw and witnessed everything going on, and pretty much like it was like a small little thing that just turned into a whole situation that didn't even need to be a situation. But because of it, basically as a result, both of those guys got fired, and then pretty much we were left not knowing what to do because it came out of nowhere. Because not only were they guys that we hanged out with a lot at the time, but a lot of kids and parents just enjoyed having them around, even as far as going out of their way to request them for birthday parties, events, and more. Though the more we got to the bottom of things, was the worse things were beginning to get worse and very hostile, and we didn't really know what was going on, so we made like a secret group chat, and so we started trying to come up with solutions, you know, just trying to work our 19-20-year-old brains and just figure out how to go about getting them back. As the weeks tracked by, we were looking for different solutions. A lot of people that had resentment towards the manager just kind of used that secret chat to air out a lot of resentment and colorful language, and just long story short, we decided that we were just going to make a petition, pretty much, and just kind of like, you know, present everyone's concerns from parents to just the rest of the community at that gym to bring those two guys back, just because the two guys that got fired, they weren't just anyone. A lot of parents especially enjoyed their presence. They were really good around kids. And so because of it, somehow, I mean, like, we knew who it was, but somehow our messages got screenshotted and leaked of like our whole just group chat we made for this whole situation. And the person especially who took the screenshots took pictures of like what a lot of people had said about the manager and a lot of the colorful cussing and language and all that. And, you know, they sent it up to the manager saw everything, and they kind of like followed like, I guess, a counter plan to basically record and track everything we were doing. And so as the weeks went by, things slowly got hostile. You know, they were sending people to watch and follow us around the facility, whether if we were just there to work or just work out. I remember seeing like people here and there just follow me around that I barely talked to at work at all, just in the middle of like an exercise set or just a conversation. Pretty much because of that, we knew something was off, and luckily one of us had access to one of like management's emails, which we weren't supposed to have, but either way, we had to do what we had to do. We didn't really know what was going on at that point, but ultimately we read everything that was going on, and it got to a point where we knew we had to bring things to a stop because a lot of this was just a lot of misunderstanding. So we just thought, okay, let's just call a meeting face to face and just stop with just the snitching and just following people around and all that weird stuff. But basically we decided the most mature thing we could do is just be professional about it and just have a sit down with them. And that's what we tried to do. And as a result, instead of coming in to me and my friend sitting down with just the manager of the YMCA and the coordinator, we found ourselves walking into a room with like the vice president of YMCA Canada and our coordinator, and this guy was not happy. He came in on a lot of misinformation that was being spread, you know, seeing he's like this higher up guy who thinks he's like better than everyone. And we came in just genuinely trying to get to the bottom of things. And as a result, it did not turn out well at all. The vice president guy, with the information I was giving, that was passed on to him, aired out my friend who had been, you know, cussing out, you know, the manager in those, you know, group texts and all that stuff. And pretty much like he didn't get escorted by the police out of the property, but he got threatened with police, so he got fired pretty much right away. And even went as far as to like give him like a lifetime ban from every single YMCA in like the country, which was, I don't know, it was pretty petty. But with me and this guy, I was trying to talk over him. He wasn't having that. And then he kicked me out originally at first, but then once I came in and I finally explained everything, and then everything finally, like, we finally came to a mutual understanding, and he finally saw what we were trying to do, because we generally did not know what was going on going into this meeting. After that, then he finally saw where things were coming from. But even then, like, there's still a huge disconnect with just your status and position when you're not like fully involved in a situation like this. And so it ended up with me leaving and quitting that same day, or just letting him know. I'm probably just gonna let him know by the following day that I'm quitting. And so that's basically what happened. That very same day I quit, a lot of people were asking me what happened and everything like that. And then even to make things worse, the following day, that's when a lot of the rumors I mentioned in part 1 were spreading about me and my friends. And funny enough, I remember that same day, the manager who we had requested to like see this whole time, she finally shows her face, asks me if I can sit down in her office, and basically just sat there, basically trying to chalk this whole situation up as I didn't know the entirety of the full story. Even though me and my friends, like, we saw all through the work emails and every single shady decision that they were making there, and finding out too that they didn't even like these guys from the very beginning, she basically chalked it up as I was just very young and naive with everything, and I have so much to learn in this world. And she was very two-faced. But to have someone just waste your time to tell you that you're just naive and you don't know what's going on your way out the door made me realize, like, I already knew it was time to leave, but it just made me realize it's time to just close, you know, the chapter on this book in my life, and just move on with my life and just keep it pushing. It just turned into a whole situation that it really didn't need to be, but because of that, along with the negative experience that was just like compressed at that McDonald's, along with it, I carried a lot of weight, resentment, and bitterness throughout that whole summer, basically. Now back to the story. Now, before the end of the year came about, at that time, I was starting to slowly drift away from going to church a little bit. I wasn't attending my small groups anymore. And so one of the small group leaders at the time, who I'll never forget, his name was Ryan, just out of curiosity reached out to me. And at the time, I didn't really want to talk to anyone who I had been just felt distant with, because at this point I was just so completely numb to just people's intentions and their motives. And I also just assumed that he was just gonna call me to just interrogate me and press me into why I probably wasn't showing up to the small groups. But we talked for a while over the phone, and while I didn't know it during that phone call, his one phone call was desperately what I needed to hear at that time. As while we were talking, I was just able to just open up about everything that I had gone through at that point, just open up about my life. And he just genuinely seemed to care for me as a person, and not as the person who hadn't been in church or just small groups in a while. And he just encouraged me with what I was going through at that time, just because it felt like God's goodness and favor just seemed like it was just gradually fading away in the distance. So I began doubting just where God was at this time in my life. But Ryan's phone calls to just affirm and just remind me of God's promises, and to just believe and to hold on to the reality of God's goodness, just gave, I guess, it gave me something to hold on to. It gave me a glimpse of light at that dark time in my life, and really just something to hold on to. And so the end of the year came, and I was looking into 2018 for a turnaround. And so I immersed myself just into making the following year a better year for myself, whether if it was just beefing up my effort in just pushing through school, basketball, starting a vlog channel at the time, self-motivation, and just absolutely refusing to be shut out next year. Everything was progressing forward within the first month of the year, until my mom one day had asked me if I wanted to go to a prayer service, or more specifically, like, she went to this like prophetic word service. And generally, I never thought too high on spoken word and prophecy, just because growing up, my mom and my dad, they would watch a lot of these prophetic televangelists and prosperity preachers. And while a good amount of them just appeared like just real pastors just prophesying and healing, I knew a lot of them had controversial reputations and aligned with what you could call, quote unquote, a false prophet. And so in general, my view on just prophecy, prophetic word, and that whole world was that it was real, but it's not as real as it's made out to be, especially from like biblical times. And that prophecies are meant for some people, but they're just not meant for everyone. And so I remember sitting down and the service was underway. And at about mid-service, the pastor just cut everything and just asked me out of everybody there to just stand up and come to the front. And when he had cut everything, he just laid his hand on my shoulder and started explaining everything that was going on in my life up to that point. And I didn't believe anything at first just because it seemed like he was just making broad generalizations until he brought up everything in my life that had just gone wrong that whole year. And he was just hitting on every key detail of how my heart felt at that time. And once I was dialed and tuned into what he was saying, he explained everything else, but then he explained why I'm in this position and that the reason why God is bringing me through this trial and this pain is because my focus and energy is shifted onto so many things, but God himself. And it made sense considering that at the time, from the very, very beginning, when this story first started all the way in part one, at the beginning of the story, I was so invested into so many different pockets and aspects of my life that I never really invested any time into just, checking in on my spiritual life, checking in on regularly going to, small groups and Bible studies and all these things. And as a result, those things became like a third, fourth, fifth seated priority. And, as a result, I just pushed those things all the way in the back. And I never really put those things at the forefront in my life. And so as a result, I stopped going to the Bible studies and all that stuff. And I just missed out on a lot of opportunities to just be in fellowship and to be in community with people who, cared about me and just wanted to check up on me the whole time. And so he gave me a set of certain things to remember, but the main thing really was to just shift all my focus back to God and to just start doing little things like just serving him through my local church and to really just put down and humble whatever I'm putting my time, effort, and energy into whatever I was doing, and to just take it and just shift it back to just serving God and into just whatever church I was going to at the time. And so I want to say that it was a breakthrough in my walk with God at that point, right then and there. And we can finally end this story and just say that God was finally being God and it's the end. But despite everything, it really wasn't.
Yeah. Please, Lord God, take this feeling away. Yeah, got me feeling away. Get my millions away. I would throw my spinning away. Yeah, for the million away. Locked up in the prison today. They just got me feeling away.
Now, Planet Wave is where you hear a lot of Paris's lamenting and just anguish over wanting God to just take away his suffering and just the growing pains of trying to walk out of a toxic relationship. And this is in the same way how I felt my relationship with God was at that point. I remember that same day going home and going in my room and just breaking down and just asking God why. Why was he doing this to me? As a young 21-year-old with the world right in front of me, why just take away every opportunity right in front of me and make me feel miserable? And as long as I'm including you in my life, why can't I just do things my way? And what's wrong with aspiring for my vision? And all of these things that I was desperately chasing. As from that point on, there was just a fight for purpose, control, and just direction over my life, with just questioning everything and just asking why was God taking everything away from me. As it led into a lot of internal processing throughout that whole year into considering if being a Christian was just a waste of time and that maybe I'm just chasing a God who ultimately just wants to see my demise in this life. Because at that point too, I was getting a lot of pushback, or I would say the most pushback that year for being a Christian at work from other coworkers who knew about my faith. And the pushback over the next few weeks just created a lot of questioning and doubts into how I even got to know God. Because the person I remember truly hearing the gospel from was from an old principal at an old Christian school I used to go to as a teen. And to make things short, later in life, he ended up getting caught up in a lot of money scamming allegations. And because of it, he left the school and everything like that. So then I was just questioning his own credibility and into just what he was truly teaching us this whole time throughout those years. I started questioning and digging into the validity of just Christianity itself, my salvation, encounter, and whether even if this whole experience with Jesus was a real thing. If that is, it was even ever real. My prayers felt like they were hurting more than they were healing, and God at that time seemed like a God that just wanted to tear me apart inside out and just keep me from finding my own well-being and happiness. And so that same day, even though throughout that year I had asked God time and time again to just bring me through these tough times, everything in that day was just crumbling apart, and I didn't really know what to do anymore, and I just felt like I didn't know what to believe in. I didn't really know what to put my identity in. I didn't really know what to do anymore, but I just cried out to God to just reveal everything, just because at this point I can't carry this hurt anymore, and I really just couldn't carry the burden of it. All I know is that in that moment I was just mad at God, and I was at a point where I was just open and willing to just step out and find my peace and identity elsewhere. And so when I'd ask God to just show me everything at my lowest point, and to show me if he is real and if I'm just wasting my time, I think that's when God finally showed up.
Hey, yo, what's good, man? Like, yo, where is air at, yo? Like, where is air at, yo? Like, come on, man. I don't want to hear no more girl song, no more Cupid, no more, Down with Queen, Cup of Seas and all that. Yo, I'm done with that. Like, I just want air. Like, that's all I want. I just want air. Can I get air? Like, come on, man. Like, niggas is dropping albums every day, B. I mean, we talked about this, like, way back, like, almost 3-4 years ago. And you done dropped everything but air. So I'm just saying, like, yo, can I have air? Like I'm just here for air. I'm just here for air, man. Real talk, yeah. But, yo, go ahead and get business.
I would say that while Paris's storytelling is uniquely his, Pictures to me is a representation of what was to come, and everything from the energy to the lyrics just related to what I was going through at that time. And just the experience of pure joy after God brings you through a trial and just shatters your whole perception and reality of your circumstance. It's definitely one of the greatest feelings ever, and the words on the song just breathe life into the failures after failures that I was just facing head on. And I especially love the opening of the song, when he just says, I got a lot
of people that's waiting. I know a lot of things ain't changed, but trust me, I'm waving. I had a conversation with Satan. I told him he ever needed a prayer, then the Lord's waiting. People talking, I hate to have this discussion to start the album out, but what it's life without a hater? They make up stories so they can have that glory. She probably told me she pregnant to try to get me on Maury. I couldn't tell if she loved me or loved my story. The plan was getting distorted. Dropped out of college to tell you repentance don't come with worry.
It's definitely one of his more talked about songs whenever his album is brought up in discussions every year around its anniversary, just because of how well the song relates to really anyone going through a feeling of just pure joy and breakthrough after a season of just complete drought and depression. I don't know why Pictures is placed up top near the intro of the album, as most of the album is pretty moody, but honestly, I would say this is like the complete opposite. I would say this is like the outro to an album when you finally just break through everything and you're just not sitting in your past and everything that affects you. And it really puts you in a headspace where it seems like you've finally overcome whatever trial and wall in this world that you couldn't break through. The lyrics on the song and just Paris in general as an artist, I don't think gets appreciated enough when, you know, anyone goes through his body of work. But the lyrics, especially on this one song, just literally related to every single thing compiled up until that one whole year I went through. Talking about my daddy won't answer me, if you've been through a rough family background, or if you've ever felt distant from God. Came to Detroit, not literally. I've been through some crazy things. The Lord been blessing me, work still stressing me. What is life without a hater? They make up stories so they can have that glory. A young and chasing dreams. Stopped out of college to tell you repentance don't come with words. Never been for the shade, but I see right through them curtains. Preach the gospel through these verses. They hearing the purpose. I think Paris's ability as a writer definitely gets overlooked when we talk about his music, but I just had to briefly point that out. But back to the story. That year, God just seemed to restore everything tenfold that had seemed lost, starting with the restoration of just finding a love and just passion again of just working with kids, through like a youth group ministry at my local church. Still working at a McDonald's, which, while yes, did suck at that point in time, was still a blessing in disguise, as even though it was hectic and crazy and all that stuff, I had made so many friends that I still talk to this day, as we'd all spend our time just laughing and just having a good time in the midst of just watching pure chaos ensue from just random fights and just any random situation. Just not feeling socially distant from people anymore, you know, going out more. And I think the most important thing, which was breaking down for myself what the true meaning of just the gospel was, and not just building my foundation and understanding and experiences based off what some shady principal like might have said like 10, 12 years ago, or having a church background that was just left, you know, unchallenged, and going to church because my parents made me go to church like everybody else. Everything that I'd experienced was finally coming to full circle, and I think God brought this album along for me to just remember those amazing moments and to remember who he is. And the biggest takeaway that whole year was, you know, realizing that for one, you can't expand your energy into so many things, so many little things, and not seek God out at all, or just not even seek him out first. Good illustration that God showed me when I started to you know, see things his way, and just he started showing me and revealing things slowly is the story with Jesus and I believe Martha. You know, Jesus was disappointed that Martha was just too busy for him, and you know, she was complaining to him that, you know, why is Mary, you know, my sister, is sitting down at your feet when she should be getting the guest house ready for your stay? And then Jesus just simply tells her to just let her be. And the whole illustration in the story is just a good picture of like where we are in today's society and how you know, busy we can be, especially in the midst of, you know, hustle culture and chasing whatever it is, riches, education, just anything. But the whole point is that, you know, we don't really make time for just centering Jesus around our lives, you know, if we're busy just, you know, trying to be busybodies around chasing, you know, other priorities. So the story is a good illustration of that, and just how to drop everything in your life and just be at the feet of Jesus. The second thing is just the process of pruning, and which can be a very, very painful process. And it is something that I get hesitant of when I ask God to help me grow in certain areas of my life to this day. But ultimately, my walk with God would have been very shallow and just very static if I didn't allow him to just come along and push me beyond those limits to bear any fruit in my life. As believers, we might wonder if our situation is going to change, you know, it's going to be different in the next 10, 20, or 30 years. And I mean, we truly won't know until we just trust God with our plans for our lives. And I think in today's age, I think a lot of people, especially around my age range, might think that, you know, like God might call us to just this one thing, and then that's kind of like where he wants us to be for the rest of our lives, just doing this one boring thing. But I don't think God wants that for us. I'm pretty sure, you know, he wants us to grow and he wants to push us. And but that process won't happen at all without pruning. So I do believe God wants us to grow. He calls us to like different areas everywhere in our lives. You know, we might not see it like when we're a lot younger, but he certainly does like push us to where he wants us to go. And however that might look like, certainly like he will push us along for sure. So I would say that's definitely a lesson he taught me for sure. And then lastly, 3, God doesn't just, work on our weaknesses, but what's important is that he actually creates weaknesses that we might have never had to show us that we need to rely on him. So going from like this soft-spoken kid in high school to this like angry 21-year-old, that at the time would have never thought that I would always, see myself getting into fights and arguments and all that stuff. But going from that and being mad at the world and just mad at everyone and short-tempered to just being more joyful than I had ever been really strengthened just my faith. It's like a weak muscle that just had never, been exposed to any type of workout, and you want to grow that muscle into a bigger muscle. So, you have to tear down that muscle. You have to constantly exercise it, tear down, the microfibers in the muscle in order for it to just be built down and then grow back up even stronger. God was with me there through it all when it just seemed like I felt like I had been abandoned. And he definitely used this album to just soundtrack my life and to curate every step of the way there. Now, all that to say, that is my story, guys, and that is my overall take on this album and how it not only broke a lot of boundaries in Christian hip hop, but also for a lot of people that just needed to hear this album as well. Also, something that I didn't realize when I rewatched part 1 was that I didn't realize how it seemed like how insensitive I came off when I made just like the beginning part of the video. I was rewatching it at the beginning and it kind of seemed like I just was insensitive, just talking about how shallow the content and subject matter was in Christian music at the time. And I felt like I should apologize for trying to make it seem like I was putting Paris's album like on a moral pedestal of Christian rap that seemed like it was more superior in its raw transparency compared to other CHH artists and just Christian artists in general that are also transparent as well. The goal was never to express that at all, but it was rather, I guess, to show how an album like Polaroid was separating itself from the standards of like commercial Christian, music, and how it answered a lot of questions to a growing number of people that were looking for relatable substance that didn't align with the standard norms of commercial Christianity. It basically became to what it is today and honestly solidified Paris's music career to this day and why people constantly bring up the album every year. Plus, I believe this album just showed that, CHH was still growing at the time, and just like the body of Christ, everybody has a role to play. And I think that as an artist, without relatable traits such as like transparency and just good storytelling or other traits in Christian rap and just Christian music in general, it loses its shape, authenticity, and just identity a little bit with not being able to hear the people that need to hear just a good message of just hope and encouragement. Ultimately, I mostly believe that's the goal for Christian music, but there's many ways of getting there. Just based on your own story. Everyone has a unique story for a different audience. So whether if it's Christian music that's quote unquote too real, that taps into other issues, uncomfortable or comfortable, I think every blend of it is needed to just reach the people that want to relate and just be encouraged by Christian music. But with that being said, guys, I think this is where I'm just gonna cap things off here. And I mean, if you made it to the end of this video, I just want to say thank you. With just how God just built me and brought me back up, and in the same way, that album encouraged me, I hope just this video I put together does the same thing for you guys. Whatever it is you guys are going through, I just hope that this can also be just a message of just hope and encouragement to anyone feeling like they're just going through a lot of hard times in their lives, especially coming out of this pandemic at this point. I really do hope this can be a video to just help anyone going through dark times or anything like that. But yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching this video. And I mean, I've been on a long hiatus with CHH videos, so we'll definitely get back on track with that and just explore just more into what's been going on in CHH lately and just more videos I've been wanting to put out for a while now. And yeah, hopefully, I mean, maybe you'll see more of my face like this, just doing these types of videos. I definitely want to put more of just documenting just, I guess, my walk, just day-to-day things out there, in my life. And I guess just how, like, this is just one instance of how CHH has helped me just with my walk with God and everything like that. And so I just wanted to share that, and hopefully, you know, I'll share more of my thoughts just in general with you guys. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next video.
I didn't get grades when I was in school. I had to go ball.